Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my creamy chicken and noodles recipe. So to get started, here I have 5 boneless, skinless chicken thighs that I've already cleaned and cut most of the fat from. In this bowl, I have all the veggies that we're going to be using in the soup. So I have some leeks. This was one whole leek that I've thinly sliced. I have a mirepoix of onions, celery, and carrots. And I have about 6 to 7 garlic cloves that I finely chopped up as well. So those are the veggies we're going to be using. Along with that, I do have some fresh thyme sprigs and a few tablespoons of some freshly chopped parsley. Going along with those, I have some egg white noodles. We're going to be using half of the bag of that. I have some butter, some flour, some heavy whipping cream. I have some chicken broth, 1 lemon, and then for some seasonings, we're going to be using bay leaves, some celery salt, some onion powder, some garlic powder, and some chicken bouillon along with some salt and pepper, and I am going to be using all-purpose seasoning for my chicken. Alright, so let's get started. Here in my Dutch oven pot, I'm going to be adding 3 tablespoons of butter. Along with that butter, I am just going to drizzle in a little bit of olive oil. This is going to ensure that the butter does not burn. Olive oil is for that non-stick coating, but the butter is for flavor. So if you use them both together, you have the flavoring from the butter, but the oil allows the butter to not burn, and it also provides a non-stick surface on your pot. You know, just a little pro tip. So I'm just going to go ahead and melt that down, and once it's nice and melty, I'm going to grab my veg and I'm going to throw all of our veggies in the pot, and we want to sweat these down, and we want to allow these to cook down a little just to get those flavors from the vegetables released into our pot before we move on. So I'm just going to go ahead, toss those in now, and then give those a quick couple of tosses before we continue. All right, now that we mix that around just a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add in my fresh thyme sprigs. I'm going to add 2 handfuls of my freshly chopped parsley, and I am going to be adding in my 2 bay leaves during this part as well. Once you toss in your fresh herbs, give that another couple of mixes, and during this sweating out and cooking down process of the vegetables, we are going to be seasoning them up as well. So right after I am done giving this a good stir, we're going to go ahead and start seasoning up these beautiful vegetables. Alright, so first I'm going to go in with some black pepper and some salt. After I add in some salt and pepper, I'm going to go ahead in with my celery salt. I am going to be adding all the measurements for everything down in the description box as well. And then something happened to my camera here, but I did add in onion powder and garlic powder. So toss all those in and give that a good mix. And we're going to continue to let these cook down in our pot for another 5 minutes or so before we move on. All right, our veggies are looking good. They're nice and sweated down, so it's time to move on with our soup. So our very next step is we're going to add in some flour right into the pot. So we're going to be adding 3 tablespoons of flour right on top of your vegetables. So grab some flour and add 3 tablespoons, and you're going to sprinkle all that flour right on top of these veggies. All right, after you add in 3 tablespoons of flour, we're going to grab our spoon and we're going to give these veggies a good toss. You want to make sure that every vegetable has a nice coating of flour on it. This is going to ensure that our soup thickens up very nicely. We are going to have a nice broth. But since we are making creamy chicken noodle soup instead of just regular, the flour is going to ensure that it gives it that nice silky texture, which we absolutely love in a nice soup. So once you mix in that flour, we're going to let this cook in the pot for 1 minute just to cook out that flour taste before we move on. Alrighty, it's been 1 minute and we are going to start adding in our chicken broth. So I am going to be using 6 cups of chicken broth. You guys can also use chicken stock, but I already had this here in my house, so this is what I'm using. But go ahead and add in 6 cups of chicken broth or 6 cups of chicken stock to your pot. Alright guys, now that we've added in our 6 cups of broth, we're going to grab our spoon and give this a good stir. You just want to make sure that there's no clumps of flour anywhere. You'll also notice that I am scraping the sides and the bottom. You want to make sure you get up all that beautiful flavor that might be at the bottom of your pot or stuck to the sides. It's just going to enhance the flavor of your soup. So after we give that a good mix, I'm going to grab my lid and we're going to let this simmer on our stove on medium-low heat. My stove is on about a 5, and we're going to just put that lid on there and let this simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes, but you want to make sure you don't cover it up completely so that it has room to breathe and the steam can be released. Next, while we are waiting for our soup to simmer, I'm just going to go ahead and season up our chicken. I'm just going to be using a basic all-purpose seasoning. You never want to put the chicken or any kind of meat that you're cooking with into your pot unseasoned. It's just going to decrease the flavor of whatever it is that you're making. We are going to be adding this chicken right into the pot. So like I said, I just want to make sure it has a good seasoning on it before we add it into our soup. So you just want to season both sides of your chicken with your all-purpose seasoning. If you do not have all-purpose seasoning, you can just use basic salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder for your seasoning. Alrighty, so it has been about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to lift that lid and I'm going to give our veggies a nice good mix before we add in our chicken. You want to make sure you give your vegetables a chance to cook without the chicken in it, especially those carrots, and sometimes onions can be a little bit crunchy, and celery. So we like to simmer this down first before we add the chicken in to give the veggies, kind of a head start, if you will, to get nice and soft and tender before we add the chicken in. This is boneless, skinless chicken, so it does cook pretty quickly. We're just going to add our chicken that's already been seasoned right here into our pot, and we're going to allow this to simmer with the broth and the veggies for about 20 minutes until the chicken is nice and cooked thoroughly and tender. So along with our chicken, this is also the step that I like to add the chicken bouillon, just to enhance the flavor of the soup and give it more of that chicken flavor. I usually wait to add this in when the chicken is already in the broth, because this also will enhance the flavor of the chicken as well. Most of the seasonings that we put right into the broth were already in that all-purpose seasoning except for the chicken bouillon. So I like to add the chicken in the soup first before I add that, so it can also grab the flavor from that as well. So now that we added in our chicken bouillon and our chicken thighs, I'm going to go ahead and add that lid back, also not covering it all the way. You don't want to create, a pressure pot. You want to make sure the steam is able to escape. So it's been 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and lift that lid, give this a nice mix. You can see that chicken is nice and cooked and ready. So I am just going to grab some tongs and I'm going to grab myself a plate, and then we're just going to take every piece of chicken out and put it on a plate so that we can shred it up. Alrighty, so now that our chicken has been set to the side, I'm going to finish our broth first before we shred that up. Into our pot, we're going to be adding 1 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. So that was my first cup, and then I'm also going to be adding in my 1/4 of a cup right into the pot. I'm going to grab my spoon and we're going to give this a good mix just to make sure that the cream is not separated from the broth. You want to make sure it turns into that nice creamy looking color. So give that a nice good toss. Look how beautiful that looks, and it's not even finished yet. All right, so now that we gave that a good mix, moving right along, I am going to be grabbing our bag of egg white noodles. You guys, I'm only going to be using half of this bag. It is a 1 pound bag of egg white noodles, so you don't need the entire bag. I'm just going to be using half of the bag of our egg white noodles. Once I add that in, I'm going to give that a good mix as well. You want to make sure that you kind of get the noodles all covered with the sauce, because that's going to allow the noodles to cook. So get them down in that broth as best as you can, and just allow that to simmer. We're going to let this simmer on our stove while we shred up our chicken breasts. We're going to let this simmer for about 10 minutes, and that'll be plenty of time to get those noodles nice and cooked. All right, while our noodles and our broth is cooking, I'm just going to take 2 forks and do this the old-fashioned way and just shred this right apart. I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit so that the video is not like ridiculously long with me doing this. But yeah, I'm just going to take my 2 forks like you see me doing here, and I'm just going to shred up each piece of chicken, and I'll be right back when I'm done. Alrighty, so our chicken is nice and shredded up and ready to go. I don't know if you guys noticed, but during that process as well, if I saw any fat that I came across, I kind of tossed that to the side and discarded that as well. But here is our chicken, and it's ready. So we're going to come back over to our pot, and we're going to take our chicken and add that right back into our soup. Any juices that might have collected at the bottom of your plate, or any vegetables that kind of snuck away with the chicken while we took it out of the pot, go ahead and add that back in too, and just give that a good mix to get the chicken all evenly distributed through the soup. During this part, I am also going to be taking out our thyme sprigs and our bay leaves. You really just want to wait until the end to discard those so that the soup has the chance to get all the flavors that it needs from those herbs. But just give that a good toss. Also, right at the end, you want to make sure you're tasting the broth for flavor. You want to make sure you add salt and pepper to taste if you need it. Alrighty, and next I like to grab my parsley, and I'm going to add a nice handful of that right on top as well. And then during this part, I also am going to be adding the juice from 1 lemon. I really think that it brings a nice brightness note to the soup. It gives it a nice light flavor, and that pop of acidity I really think helps cut through some of the fat from like the cream. Sometimes, you know, soups, especially creamy soups, have the tendency to be a little bit on the heavier side. It is a comfort dish, so I really think, you know, just adding that pop of acidity, that brightness from the lemon really does enhance the soup. If you guys don't want to add the lemon, you definitely don't have to. I just personally think that it elevates the soup to a whole new level, just having that nice brightness in there, that nice pop of acidity. But that is it, you guys. After you add in your lemon juice and your parsley, you're going to give that a nice good mix, and that is it. Our soup is done. Look how beautiful that looks, nice and creamy and delicious. And this was a cold and rainy day when I made this, so it really went perfect with the weather that we were having on this particular day, and we absolutely love this soup. All right, so here is the finished product, you guys. This is our creamy chicken and noodle soup. I really hope you guys enjoyed this recipe, and if you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.